All right, so continuation of our discussion about lightweight or ultralight rifles. This is a factory Kimber Mountain Ascent, and this is in 308. And for a lot of years, I would say this was considered the gold standard for ultralight rifles. They advertised this at, I believe, 4 3/4 pounds, so 4 pounds 12 ounces, which this 308 version is probably going to be close. Let's put it on the scale just real quick. So empty chamber, including the muzzle brake, including the sling studs, pretty much exactly what you would get from the factory. We're at 4 pounds, 13.6 ounces. Okay, so this it's got a fluted barrel, fluted bolt, kind of a fluted bolt knob. It's got an internal mag well doesn't have the magazine, carbon fiber-ish kind of stock they claim. And I believe this is a 24-inch barrel, if I'm not mistaken, and a muzzle brake. It's got a weird thread pattern, a real skinny, I want to say it's 7/16 by 28 instead of half by 28, which is a more common thread pattern. I could be wrong on that. So this is not going to be, you'd have to have some sort of an adapter, assuming you did not cut this down, to be able to run this with any sort of a normal 5/8 24 suppressor. So get that threaded back on there. What do we say? 4 pounds, 13.6. Grab my little marker here. So Mountain Ascent. .6 ounces. Okay, so that's in the 308. Now, one thing I'll point out about the weight of various rifles, a 308 diameter barrel or diameter hole down the middle of your barrel is going to weigh less than the same profile of barrel. When we talk about the profile of the barrel, we're talking about the diameter, outer diameter of the barrel. The same profile barrel in a 6.5 or a 6.5 Creedmoor, 6.5 millimeter diameter internal hole that's going through the barrel is going to have more steel left in the barrel. So 6.5 barrel is going to be heavier, all else being equal, than your 308 barrel. So I'll do a little more detail on that in a subsequent video, some exact numbers once we do the math. But it's going to be a couple of ounces typically in a length of in a 24-inch barrel. So your 6.5 Creedmoor version of this is probably going to be, I would say, just under 5 pounds, maybe 5 or 4 pounds, 15.3, 15.4 ounces, something in that neighborhood. So very close to 4 pounds, 15 ounces. Now, if we take off this little muzzle brake, which doesn't weigh a whole lot, you can kind of compare some apples to apples here. So the muzzle brake itself is weighing 0.9 ounces, bare rifle, no brake, 4 pounds, 12.6 ounces. Now, the reality is, if I was going to truly compare this with another rifle, I would want to have some sort of an adapter that's going to be taking this smaller diameter thread pattern up to something that I can actually use for a suppressor, which is going to probably add that weight back in. But not even doing that, we're at 4 pounds, 12.7 ounces. No brake. Okay, so let's compare that with my Kimber Hunter that I had modified. Now, one thing I want to show you is, again, a lot of people are concerned about the idea of cutting down a barrel, and why that would be good, why that would be bad, what are the upsides, the downsides. And I'll say really the only real downside, in my opinion, of cutting down a factory barrel is the potential for the loss, or how much velocity you're going to lose per inch of barrel. So just holding these up together here, you can see that with the suppressor, this Kimber Hunter, with an 18-inch barrel, is an inch longer than the factory Mountain Ascent. Now, why is that important? If I was to put this suppressor on the end of the Mountain Ascent with the 24-inch barrel, I'm going to be sticking way out the top. If let's say my rifle's on my backpack, and I've got 24 inches plus 7 inches on top of that, I've got a tall post sticking off the top of my head that I have to consider every time I bend down and try and get through thick brush. It's less portable, I have to haul around bigger gun cases. When I'm moving the rifle onto target, it's just got that much, just a little bit more length there I have to deal with. I mean, we're talking essentially the equivalent of a 30-inch, even longer than 31, 32-inch potential rifle length, if you will, when it's all said and done, which makes for a fairly long package. So cutting it down, I get the same length as a factory rifle, but I get the benefit of the suppressor, the quieter, more hearing safe value in having the suppressor on the end there. So, like I said, the only real downside to cutting the barrel down is you're going to lose a little bit of velocity. Now, if we're talking just factory loads, you're going and buying the ammunition from a box store or wherever, your factory ammunition is probably going to lose in about the 25 to 30 feet per second range. So if you cut down a 24-inch barrel to 18 inches, that's 6 inches of barrel loss. Let's factor about 150 to 180 feet per second loss. So if you started at 26 feet per second, 2,600 feet per second, or 2,650 feet per second, you're going to end up somewhere around 25, or excuse me, about 2,450, maybe 20, let's say even 2,500, depending on how little you lose. Now, if you're a reloader, you can usually gain most of that back and still be within, in my opinion, if you find the right powder, right bullet combo, you can usually gain most of that difference back. So let's put this rifle on the scale here for a quick comparison. We'll have to do some rough math. All right, so with the scope, but nothing else, so I've got empty mag, and I'm actually going to swap the bolt, because if I'm going to actually run this particular rifle, I'm actually going to use the Mountain Ascent bolt, because they're the same. Between the Hunter and the Mountain Ascent, they both are an 84M, a Kimber 84M action. They both use the same bolts. So with the lighter bolt, but not a fluted barrel, just a shortened barrel, which shortening that barrel is going to take, on these thinner profile barrels, it's about 0.9 ounces per inch. Let's see if I can get that to balance on there. So no suppressor, no tripod, just the scope caps and rings. I'm at 6 pounds, 2.4 ounces. Let's put that right here. 2.4 ounces with scope. So I know this scope here weighs 20.5 ounces. The rings are about 3 and the caps are about 1. So so we've got 20.5 for the NXS. We've got 3 for the DNZ Game Reapers. And we've got 1 ounce for the caps. Okay, so our total here is, what's that, 24.5 that we would subtract off of our bear rifle weight. So that's, we know that's about a pound and a, well, it's a pound and a half. So if we're trying to do easy math here, so if we took off, so that's 5 pounds, 4.5 pounds, plus the difference here. So we're at 4.5 plus the 2.9 ounce difference. So 4.5 is, so it's 8 ounces plus the 2.9, so we're at 9, let's see, 8 and 3 would be 11, so 10.4 pounds. 10.9 ounces. If I did my math right here. So you can tell math is not my strong point. I normally would have a calculator out here, but we don't. My last calculator lost a button. Okay, so 4 pounds, 10.9 ounces. Less, so we're almost 2 ounces lighter than the 308 version of the Mountain Ascent, which again, it would be 2 ounces lighter than the 6.5 version. So this being a 6.5 Creedmoor and being here, it would be comparable to about 4.5 ounces less than what you would get in a factory Kimber Mountain Ascent. So what did it take to get to this point? If you are wanting to modify one of these Kimber Hunters, the first thing you're going to do is when you get this stock home, without doing any cutting or anything, if you take the end of the stock off and open up the back end just by pulling the screws off the recoil pad, you're going to see that there's a big hunk of gel, and that hunk of gel weighs about 8 ounces. And the way to get that out, the easiest way I found was literally to take like a butter knife and some rubbing alcohol. Just kind of dip the butter knife, put the rubbing alcohol maybe on a plate or something, a little pool of it, dip the knife in it, slide the knife in between the gel and the plastic, and just kind of work it around, put a little bit more rubbing alcohol, and just kind of let that rubbing alcohol kind of work it, breaking the bond between that gel and the plastic. And 5 minutes of that, and that plastic will just pull right out, or the gel will pull right out. Like I said, that's an 8 ounce weight savings right off the bat. And then you've got, so the normal fore end would have been the same length here as your factory Mountain Ascent that we just saw. Personally, I don't need, especially in a shorter barrel rifle, I don't need a long fore end. As long as I have a place for my tripods or bipods to mount, that's my primary goal. So in this case, I cut the extra length off, and I trimmed down the stock so that the barrel was completely free floated, and it gave me a spot. It's really hard to see, but it gave me a spot I could hold my thumb, and a really good grip point that I have a lot of maneuverability with this rifle one-handed, and I can bring it to bear. I can get it lined up for a shot. It's really a handy grip for moving around a lightweight rifle. And obviously I added some weight back in with adding a cheek riser, adding this vertical style grip, swapped out the original recoil pad, and so on. So it took a few hours of fiddling. And again, we're going to see, I'm going to swap this stuff out for a little bit better looking, some modifications to the stock here. And you might not like the look of this forend. This was something that I had seen on some forum posts. Somebody else had done something similar, and I thought that it would work for my needs, and it's been great. It actually, these Kimber stocks are actually quite a bit more rigid than other plastic stocks out there. I mean, they actually claim in the specs, if I'm not mistaken, 65 foot-pounds of torque for their action screws, which is a lot for a plastic stock. And so it's not the lightest stock in the world. I mean, there are things you could do to make it lighter, but as you see it, it's coming in a little under 20 ounces. There are things that you could do to make this particular rifle lighter. If I had started with this Mountain Ascent barreled action, for example, and had it cut down, there'd be 1.5 ounce savings for the fluting. I've got friends who've taken a stock like this and they've basically skeletonized it. They've drilled holes into non-essential parts into the stock and whatnot so that they could, shave a few more grams here and there. And it's possible. I've seen their work. It's possible to get this particular stock, especially if you don't add in some of these features, down to as low as 15 ounces, which is less than many custom kind of carbon fiber or graphite options. So one place, if anybody figures it out on where to save some weight on a Kimber, especially in the Kimber Hunter line, is if you can figure out something that is lighter than this magazine here, which Kimber magazines, for whatever reason, they're putting them in these lightweight rifles, 2.6 ounces. That's more than a Tikka. That's more than the lightweight MDT 3-rounders. It's just unnecessarily robust with this steel liner and everything. When in the day of poly mags working just fine, there's an extra unnecessary ounce there that could be knocked off. So. Yeah, this has been a fun project. Again, it doesn't look like all that much, but some of these features that we've added seriously have improved the shootability of this rifle, tenfold, and made it one of my favorite rifles to shoot, even though it doesn't look that great. Now, last but not least, I was going to just bring this one out just because it's a project that I am presently working on. I wanted everything that I would get in this lightweight Kimber, but I wanted it in a different caliber option. The one thing that you don't get with Kimber rifles is you don't get a lot of caliber options. You literally, in the short action options, are limited to 6.5 Creedmoor and 308 Winchester. And Kimber needs to step up their game. There's a lot of other caliber options out there nowadays. 6mm Creedmoors, 243s. They did have a 243 version in this 84M that I don't believe is made anymore. 7mm.8. There's a lot of other options that would be I think a better choice for some hunting purposes. Now, for me, I'm looking at less recoil, and this one here, I had this one built by a company called LRI. This is a 6mm Creedmoor barrel, and I wanted the features or the lightweight capability of this Hunter that I made, but I wanted it with the ability to put it in a chassis. Now, there's some things that you get in a chassis that you don't get in a typical plastic stock, or even a carbon fiber, in a more of a traditional stock. You get the ability to have a folder, which for packing in, going real compact, makes a huge difference. You get in a chassis style, you get the bedding, the connection between your action and the stock itself is a little bit more repeatable. If you wanted to be able to swap one barreled action from the next. And if I'm taking this one in and out, it's, I probably am going to have to resight it in if I put it into any, a normal unbedded normal stock. Now, I could have this stock bedded, this Kimber. I could have it bedded, and it would be quite a bit more repeatable that way. But absent actually bedding the stocks, a chassis is a really good option. I really have found that I shoot, and a lot of our kids shoot a pistol grip or a vertical grip style of stock better. You can see the lengths that I've gone to make this a vertical grip. It's still just not quite as comfortable to use as a factory built vertical grip or a pistol grip style. This particular chassis comes with a thumb rest that's just perfectly placed. It's got a full length ARCA rail. Now, normally if you're going to get in a chassis style of rifle, you're going to have a huge weight penalty. Now I've made my own stock here, which shaved quite a bit of weight off of the factory. This is the MDT HNT26. I've got a Mac Brothers Element short action. It's a Remington 700 clone. But all this bare rifle, as we're going to compare this with our Mountain Ascent numbers here. If I can get it to balance there. This is including a mag, a 3-round mag. We're at 4 pounds, 13.2 ounces. So we were at 4 pounds, 12.7, no break, trying to compare as apples to apples as possible. This is an 18-inch barrel, of course. With the Mountain Ascent, we had the 24-inch barrel. But we're talking within half an ounce of weight between the two. There's a couple things that I plan to do that probably will take that half an ounce off, to be honest. I feel like this is, I consider I get to have my cake and eat it too, so to speak. So when you're looking at what you can do with these lightweight builds, there's a lot of ways you can take it. As I pointed out in other videos, why is this important? Because at the end of the day, I like to be able to run my suppressors. I like to be able to have a tripod. I like to be able to have a scope that has a dialing capability. It's got my scope caps. I like to be able to carry some extra ammo in an ammo sleeve. I like to have all of those features and still be in that 8 to 8.5 pound range. And in order to do that, I got to be able to start with a sub 5 pound rifle. And that's where a lot of this is gravitating to. Now, that can be done with the Kimber Mountain Ascent, no doubt. And if you don't mind a sporter style stock, just go out and buy yourself a Kimber Mountain Ascent, and you're there. You're right on target. You can get a thread adapter for the muzzle. Don't even need to cut it if you don't mind the length. Put a suppressor on it, and you're there. But MSRP on this rifle here is over $2,000. Quite a bit more than double your Kimber Hunter. And in the end, the improvements that I would have made to that Mountain Ascent, I would do just as well and easier and cheaper if I start with the Kimber Hunter. And I'll point out that really the only difference, set up as it is right here, only difference between this and the Mountain Ascent with what I end up with is a non-fluted barrel and factory non-fluted bolt. And there's companies that you can send your bolt and barrel off to have them fluted. Now, these this style of bolt is one that there's only a handful of companies that will actually do it. So do keep that in mind. Lots of companies will flute a factory Tikka bolt or a Rem 700 bolt, but not very many. Just there's some extra parts and pieces that would have to come off of this to make it go in their machines. But there are a few that will actually flute a Kimber bolt. So for several $100s, probably still less than the difference of putting in that Mountain Ascent, you're going to get all the benefits of the Mountain Ascent if you wanted that extra couple of ounces. It really is all we're talking about. But still, as you can see, well under the objective. And in my mind, the objective would be a 5 pounder or less rifle. That you would, if you start that 5 pounds or less, you have enough weight room to add the scope that you need, add the suppressor that you want, add the features like an Arca rail, add a lightweight tripod or a lightweight bipod, and still be under that 8.5, 8-pound range that makes it a shootable rifle recoil-wise, assuming you're in a lighter recoiling caliber like a 6.5 Creedmoor or a 6 Creedmoor, 243, 223, calibers that'll work for your elk hunting, your deer hunting, your wolf hunting, your bear hunting, whatever it is that you're hunting, work for your needs, but be shootable for yourself, kids, small frame, large frame people, everyone in between. So if you have any questions about this, anything that you've seen here thus far, put them in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next video.